Hello, hemp supporters, and welcome to USHempTV. I'm Alyssa Erickson, and today I'm joined by Dr. Duffy MacKay, the Senior Vice President and Head of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs for CV Sciences. Duffy, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. It's great to be here.
We wanted to have you on the show today to talk about dietary supplements and how CBD and other hemp-derived cannabinoids fall within that space. And you are the expert in this field. Prior to your role with CV Sciences, you spent 10 years with the Council for Responsible Nutrition, and you continue to serve on that board. And you're also serving on the American Botanical Council Advisory Board and the FDLI Cannabis-Derived Products Committee. Talk a little bit more about your background and how that led you to the CBD space.
Well, so originally I am trained as a naturopathic doctor. I practiced for 14 years, but along the way, actually while I was in school, I connected with the healthcare practitioner line of dietary supplements. It sells only to chiropractors, naturopaths, and MDs. And so I continued to work with them throughout my practice, thorn research. And then along the way, I got really excited about omega-3s and all the science coming out. And I had the opportunity to move companies to Nordic Naturals, well-known fish oil company. And that was a really great experience while the science was just, exploding, a lot like the hemp and CBD industry right now. I learned a lot about just how a business evolves over time. And then I had an opportunity to move to DC and do some work in the policy arena with CRN. I did that for 10 years. And right in the middle of, when I was getting my stride in DC, along comes the Farm Bill and the legalization of hemp. And then, of course, the explosion of CBD products. And I had already been deep in the middle of a lot of policy conversations at DC. So to me, it was really intriguing, this notion of a controlled substance now becoming an agricultural commodity, the idea that extracts could be sold as dietary supplements, but then you have this other layer of FDA's policies and rules. And so it was, one of the areas with the most confusion and the most debate. So it was really fun to get involved in. I participated in the May 31st meeting when all of this got started at the public meeting at FDA. But then because of all that excitement, I decided to move and join one of the lead companies, CV Sciences, that had been really working on these things and selling consumer products since the beginning. And so I've been with the company for 2 years, and it's been just as wild and full of change as it's been, for the last 6 or 7 years. Nothing seems to get boring.
You obviously had this experience first in the dietary supplement space, which led you into the CBD space. Based on the other supplements that you're familiar with, which you worked with, how does CBD compare, and why are we looking at regulating this as a dietary supplement?
Well, first and foremost, when the Farm Bill passed, hemp became a legal agricultural commodity. So it's a plant, and it can be defined as a botanical. And so it meets the definition, FDA's definition of a dietary ingredient, because it's a plant, just like echinacea or St. John's wort or any other plant. And so you're allowed in the dietary supplement regulations to sell an extract of a plant. And so therefore a hemp extract that contains CBD is a completely legal dietary supplement. But then you have this background layer where they say, well, hey, hold on a second. If something has already been researched as a drug, you can't introduce it as a dietary supplement. But that argument really has a lot of flaws in it, because the fundamental disagreement between the agency and the industry is, well, is the article that was the subject of the clinical trials and the research in the drug space the same article that we're selling in the dietary supplement space? And it's a pretty obvious from a scientific perspective that that answer is no. These are very different articles. I mean, at the most basic, the drug form is derived from marijuana, controlled substance. It's a highly purified compound, and it's provided at very high concentrations and doses, juxtaposed to dietary supplement forms, which are derived from hemp, which is not a controlled substance. They're provided in very non-purified forms, all the way from full spectrum extracts and broad spectrum extracts, and they contain much more moderate levels of CBD. So these are entirely, no scientist would look and do a laboratory analysis of these two articles and say, oh yeah, they're the same, they're very different. So FDA hasn't really gone there, and so they always lean on this idea that, well, we don't know if it's safe because there's evidence out there that CBD can, have safety issues, liver toxicity or whatnot. But that's also a faulty argument because that evidence is based on the drug form that's a highly purified form provided at very high amounts. When you look at all the scientific evidence related to the supplemental forms, it all shows a very strong safety profile. And so this is not uncommon when you look at natural products. If you look at something as simple as caffeine, when provided in the form of coffee or a green tea extract, or in moderate amounts in soda pop, or even a weight loss supplement, below 200 milligrams, these are all very safe ways to consume caffeine. However, if you get upwards of 800 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams of caffeine, you're going to start to see hypertension, irritability, rapid heartbeat. You can have people have seizures. And so it's unfair to say, well, because there's data on the toxicity of caffeine, which we all know is there, we're not going to allow consumers to consume caffeine. That's what FDA is trying to play. They're saying, well, there's evidence that CBD may be unsafe, so we don't think consumers should consume CBD. That's kind of scientific hogwash, and they know ultimately they'll lose that argument. And that's why some of the international countries like Australia and others are beginning to move ahead and say more moderate amounts of CBD are okay as non-prescription products, the equivalent of dietary supplements in those regular, in Australia or other places. So we think over time, the arguments that FDA is putting forth will not, hold up.
I love the caffeine analogy that you gave, because I think that hits the nail on the head as far as what we're talking about here and the different amounts. And you also talked about the scientific data, and we know that the FDA has their own data, but CV Sciences and you've been really involved with some clinical trials and some studies to kind of help disprove some of this. Based on what your findings are, what can you say to those arguments?
Well, CV Sciences, started with doing some preclinical toxicology work, animal studies. We're consuming the CBD to figure out if there was adverse effects that were reached, and then, interpreting that to come to the conclusion that these moderate amounts, in the ranges of 100 milligrams, you're not going to see the negative health effects that you see if you're consuming, 1,000 or 1,500 milligrams. So to further that, we've done some clinical trials in humans to look at the benefits. So we did a randomized controlled trial. We've done a bunch of providing of our product to different clinicians that have published case series and case studies and conditions like PTSD and anxiety and sleep disorders. And we're really just, as a company, trying to contribute to the scientific or to the advancement of our scientific understanding. You have to remember that hemp has been a controlled substance for over 70 years. So it's been very difficult for scientists to get a hold of it and really study it and really appreciate the potential benefits. And so while the science right now, there's a lot of gaps, it's unfair to say, we don't know enough. We're beginning to, our company's done some studies, other companies have done some studies. We have human clinical studies in the areas of like anxiety and sleep. And so the excitement is just bubbling up. We're just getting started. And so, I really look towards the future. One more thing, when you're looking at safety, another thing that's important is once your products are out there in real world or people are consuming them in the real world situations. And so we in the spirit of compliance with FDA regulations, we collect and record all of our adverse events, and we report the serious ones to FDA. And we had data from over 2 years of doing this and about 5 million units sold. And so we were able to do an analysis of that data and publish it. And we also submitted that to FDA as sort of post-market real world data.
The FDA, their argument is we don't have enough data, or they've cited the liver toxicity and whatnot. But isn't it just as unsafe to have products out there not being regulated? So, it's like, here we are, what is the lack of regulatory guidance by the FDA? How is that affecting the CBD market? And how do you feel consumers are being impacted by this also?
Yeah, the immediate effect is that reliable, trustable retailers are not carrying ingestible products. Places where a lot of consumers would go, mainstream retailers, have really stood on the sidelines because of FDA's somewhat gray area. So it's unfortunately, consumer access is limited in some areas. There are stores that have figured out how, and they've got good legal opinions, and those are our partners, and we support them immensely. But they're putting themselves out there by carrying CBD, especially in some states. So some retailers don't want to take that risk. And what happens is a lot of the CBD sales is online, where you don't have, unfortunately, the step where all of the retailers that carry our product, they ask, show us your certificate that shows the hemp was grown in the USA under the Farm Bill conditions, or in an international sanctioned way. Show us your lab reports that you've tested for contaminants and heavy metals. So the consumer is being protected when these products are going through the gatekeepers of the mainstream retailers. And unfortunately, when the products are on the internet, you're hoping that the retailer, there's some companies that only sell on the internet, and we've tested their products, and it's not looking good. In fact, there was just a report last week where there was about 300 companies and 2,900 samples, and it was unfortunately a mess. And companies didn't do that well. But again, it was like no-name brands, brands you never heard of that consumers probably find on the internet, that sell to golfers or whatever it is, and it's like silly time. But as FDA, if they get their act together and they do full regulation, we hope that will all kind of go away. Well, I previously mentioned this FDA policy that says if something has already been researched as a prescription drug. And what this does is says, because the scenario around hemp is so unique and it's been a controlled substance for 70 years, and the natural product, dietary supplement, consumer product industries had no opportunity to do product development, that FDA is going to write a law, Congress will write a law that says, we're going to remove this arbitrary first to market provision and allow these products to go into the market and be regulated by FDA under the existing FDA model. So if you want to be a supplement, you're going to have to follow the supplement rules. FDA will come into your facility, they'll do an inspection, they'll look at your labels, and if you're not compliant, you're out. And that would allow then retailers to bring these products into their stores with full confidence that they've been made under GMPs, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a real simple fix for a very upside down situation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stakeholders with a lot of different points of view on the issue. And so we have a lot of work to do to get people to see how this really is a solution that balances consumer access, which, as the previous FDA commissioner said, it's a fool's game to think we're not going to get, consumers are going to stay away from CBD products. They love them. They make them feel good. They reduce their stress. They help them sleep. And so, again, it's a fool's game to think that's going to stop. So what we need to do is balance consumer access with consumer safety and make sure these products are made under GMPs and they're tested for heavy metals and they don't have too much CBD in them, et cetera.
And this is all really standard stuff. We're not really, if you're producing a good product and you're already doing this, you're ready to go. And I think this is a way to, no pun intended, weed out the companies that are selling online that don't have the COAs, that don't have the proper protocols in place. So we're not asking for anything that shouldn't already technically be happening.
Yeah, essentially an industry saying, FDA, we want to be regulated. Our success and our future to mature as an industry and provide the types of products that we think consumers want, they have real labels with the QR code and all the information they're looking for. That requires a gatekeeper, that requires a regulator and a strong regulator. And that's how the supplement industry has been allowed to flourish, and consumers can have confidence that what is in the bottle and on the label is the same. And so these are important things.
Duffy, thank you so much. Are there any final words you have for us before we sign off?
Nope, keep up the good work. We need you, and hopefully we're having this conversation in a year and it's a much different environment for us.
And hemp supporters, if you're out there, please go to hempsupporter.com, go to our federal action page and message your members of Congress and ask them to support this legislation.